project. Right, this is our first running battery electric loco that we've had at Boston Lodge. It and its brother or sister came from the Tideway Tunnelling project in London. That's a big sewer project under the city, 25 miles long, I think. Anyway, last year the two locomotives were working in the tunnel, and in I think it was August last year they came to us. They were 2'6" gauge when they came, which was obviously the gauge of the line in the tunnel, but we've re-gauged this one to 2 foot gauge to suit our line. It was relatively easy to do. So anyway, so the loco is basically, as it came out of the tunnel, just re-gauged. We've got it going and we're just experimenting with it to basically see how it works, what it does, and how we might modify it to be more suitable for what we need. The locos have lead acid batteries, and all the batteries are in this box here, which weighs 5 tons, so it's pretty heavy. The loco weighs 9 tons without the battery, so when they're together, that's quite a good weight to be a yard shunter and a works electric loco. So the lead acid batteries obviously need recharging. We got 4 very high power chargers that came with the locos. We've not used any of those chargers yet, because I say they're very high power and will recharge the battery very quickly, which is, if you're working a tunnelling contract, what you need. So they would, using the lifting hooks, lift a battery out, put it on charge, lift a fully charged battery and put it into the loco. We got 6 batteries for the 2 locos, and the batteries are in relatively good condition because they were renewed only a few years ago. So anyway, the chargers we've got, having taken them apart, we find that there are 4 smaller chargers inside each high power charger. Now, we didn't use the high power charger because the cabling would have meant we would have had to have a dedicated cable from the electrical switch room to the charging point, and we don't know where the final charging point will be. So anyway, so we bought a smaller charger, and then, as I say, having looked inside the high-powered chargers that came with the locos, we've found that there are 4 chargers in there that we can use individually if they are correctly wired up. So we're looking at doing that at the moment, which will mean that we can have charging points relatively easily about the railway to keep them topped up. So the locos themselves were built in 2012, as I say, for a tunnelling project. I'm not sure when they went to the Tideway Tunnel. They may have been built new for that, I'm not certain, but anyway, that's where they were latterly. We got the 2 locos for a good price, a little more than the scrap value, I think, and they're in relatively good condition, even though this one looks a bit tatty. But as I say, we've got some ideas for work we want to do. Here are 2 refurbished battery packs for the locos. These have been refurbished by Northern Industrial Battery Services in Llanymynech, which we're very grateful for their help and assistance with this project. Chris Gilliard, the man that runs the company, he knew Neil Clayton, our electrical engineer, for many years, so they've done us a favour, and they're based in North Wales, so that's very good. Anyway, they've been through these batteries, and if we lift a lid, you can see the cells in here. So these lower voltage cells are all wired up so that they produce approximately 200 volts at the output. I say these have all been taken out and refurbished, checked out individually, and they have a water filler pipe here, so that you can put on a fixer water pump device, and you can top up all the batteries in one go rather than having to top them up individually. So they're like the lead acid batteries used for starting a car, basically, only there's a lot of them, as you can see, and they're quite a bit bigger. They're tall batteries. So I say we've got 6 of these for the 2 locos, and so hopefully that will give us a very good battery life. I'm not sure how long they might last, but if a battery starts to fail, we can swap cells from a good battery, so hopefully we can keep at least 2 batteries going for many years. The first use of these locos that we're thinking about is for yard shunting work, because we have quite a lot of yard shunting to do here at Boston Lodge and at Dinas, and indeed at the moment at Glenapulse Depot. So that's the first planned use. Now, although this loco looks quite small, it's relatively heavy at what is it, 14 tons. And it's also reasonably powerful. It's 150 horsepower from its 2 motors. So it'll make a very good yard shunter. So this we've tried pushing things around the yard, and it easily moves a Garrett at something like, I don't know, 20% of the power output. So it'll push the Garrett up to this stabling siding here for the Garretts. So compared to the Moyler Guest, which is over there, it's a lot more powerful. It's relatively easy to prepare for use. A few checks and basically turn it on, let the air compressor run, build up air, and it's ready to go. So it's much quieter. There's no fumes in the erecting shop, which the fitting staff like, and it's really quiet, so you can hear what's going on much more easily. So there's a few things about the Loco that are not so suitable for work at Boston Lodge, and that's the fact that the cab is relatively small and low and narrow. So one of the modifications we're thinking of is to give the Loco a much bigger cab, more like maybe the Moyler Guest's cab, or maybe even the Lilla's cab, which is behind it, something quite relatively large. So 2 people can ride on the Loco, and also the driver will be able to look out much more easily. He can see round, he'll be able to see round what is shunting, which is obviously very useful and important. So we've got a scheme to, I say, build a bigger, wider cab. That will also allow us to pivot the coupling instead of at this point here. We could bring the pivot point for the coupling much further back, which means that'll be good, because then the coupling won't have to project so far from the end of the Loco. We've not got a coupling on here at the moment, but if you want to come and have a look at the other end, we can have a look at that. So at this end, you can see we've temporarily fitted an adapter chopper coupling. So these we make and have in stock for adapting to wagons, and for now this will do very well for shunting stuff around it. Say it pivots on the pin there, so that's very good. But the problem is, if we get to a very sharp curve, then the coupler will have to swing quite a long way to get to the coupling of the vehicle that we're coupling to, and that might lead to some problems. So ideally we'd have a longer coupler. The trouble is the Locos are quite long themselves, so as I say, raising the cab floor up means we can put this pivot point right back about where the driver's seat is at the moment, and that will mean the coupler will be able to swing relatively easily and remain in the centre line of the track much better. So that'll be a much better coupling arrangement. One of the things that I say, initially we want them to be yard shunters, maybe one here at Boston Lodge, maybe one at Dinas, but also we want to look at using them on works trains. So say maybe going to Minforth Yard and getting the coal wagons, and then also moving empty carriage stock around. So that means that really we need a vacuum brake. And so one of the things that we could do is, if we just have a single cab, a single driving cab at one end, the other end cab could house a vacuum brake exhauster, which we would drive electrically. So that's something we need to look into. So we wouldn't equip the loco itself with vacuum brakes. We would just equip it so that it could haul a vacuum, it could create vacuum and have a through vacuum pipe so that it could haul vacuum brake stock. Because at the moment the locos are air braked, but they have an electric brake, which is the first brake you use, so that dumps regenerated power into a set of resistors. And then, as I say, there's an electric backup brake that operates on a big disc on the final drive gearboxes as a stopping and parking brake. Okay, so there's a screen here which normally you would see a view from a camera, either from the other end or they were wired remotely to a camera at the other end of the train, so that the driver would have an idea of where he was going, see what he's doing. Now that's not working at the moment, and I don't think we'll use that eventually. But the other controls we've got are the loco air brake. So I say this operates a caliper directly on the final drive gearboxes of the loco. So that's applied, released. Then you've got a drive control. So if you click that, so direction selected, dead man switch closed. So this is the dead man switch, and you push it forward to drive, put it back to brake. And say this is an electric brake which just dumps regenerated power to the resistors. But obviously you need the air brake for final stopping and parking. There's a horn and sanders, so sand for going that way, sand for going the other way. But at the moment the sanders don't work because the sand pipes are still set for 2'6" gauge. They're outside the rails, so they don't effectively sand at the moment. And here's the sand boxes. And there, so you just put the sand in there, and away you go. Okay, you're in. You're in.
Quick update on our NG15 Kalahari number 134. Since we last spoke to you, we've continued to work on the engine at our working parties on the final stretch with it. Completed all the pipe work, bar some small auxiliaries still to be connected, running plates, cab front. We've also built an external ash pit outside the shed for this loco, and we've completed inside the cab that you couldn't see last time, the spindle plate with all the pressure gauges and valves and so on, in order to check that the pipe work is okay and all the valves can be operated from inside the cab. We've managed to progress the items sufficiently so that we have been able to steam the loco again for the first time in its more or less complete condition. And I'm very pleased to say that we entertained the boiler inspector a couple of days ago, and the loco has passed its hydraulic and steam test with flying colours. So he was also very complimentary about all the work that he's seen on the engine, which is great for the team to hear. And what this means is that we can announce now that the loco will be available at the Superpower event in Light Steam. We'll also be doing some footplate rides, so everybody will be able to see and inspect the new machine and have a ride at DNAS station in the cab with us, whilst the loco is then prepared for its gauging runs and some load trials in the next months, as when time and labour allows. So hopefully you've already got that event in your diary, 14th and 15th of September, where all of our Garrett locomotives, including the Garrett K1, that will return from Statfold Barn for the event, will be operating on the passenger and freight trains. Sure to be a great event. Also now very pleased to announce that our new locomotive will be available in steam.
Hello, welcome again to Glamour Puff. Here is another Mountaineer update for you. What we've been up to in the last 3 months, I think, or 2.5 months since we last spoke to you. This is the boiler. It just has moved from just up there. Not a huge amount visually has happened with this, but a lot of the important work, preliminary stuff, has actually now been done and has been completed in terms of inspection. So the work that was done on the front tube plate earlier on has now been crack tested again, along with the rear tube plate, and they're now found to be absolutely fine with the non-destructive testing. Some metal particle testing has now taken place alongside some official thickness testing. So all the welds and all the plate work is all absolutely fine. Also, the boiler inspector has been to look at the boiler and has looked at the findings from all the reports, and from what I've been told by Jonathan Wally is that all the stays, I think, are fine. The only area that we have to do a little bit of work to is the rear bit of the inner firebox corners. On the water side, they have grooved in on the weld at the back, so right at the back here on the inside on the water space, it has grooved in to the extent where it's not leaking, but the boiler inspector was like us to do something to it, and all that will happen is it'll get cut into by the team at Boston Lodge, the boiler smith, and they'll basically, as Dylan Ham described it to me, 3D print bit of boilerplate in by welding in to the gap, and then the boiler will then be fine, subject to having new tubes put in and expanded. We've got some volunteer jobs to do on this to make blanking plates for all of the exit ports of the boiler, so when we do come to hydraulically test it, or they have to hydraulically test it while they're doing stuff, it's quite easy to put all the plates on and there to hand. So it's all looking very good for the boiler. We just need the only bit left now is the fundraising. So money has been coming in, and I simply just urge you that to get this into Boston Lodge this winter, which I'm due to have a meeting, which I'll speak a bit more about when we're looking at the chassis, about it, to hopefully confirm that within the next month or so. Funding is key, so we can get cracking on with all the work that needs doing to this, or the not a huge amount of work that needs doing to this, and all the other little bits like the spark arrestor and the ash pan and all the little bits of fittings, so that hopefully early next year we could have a boiler that's got a ticket that could go back on the frames, ready to start all the work with that. Right, so as I said before, that's everything with the boiler. Now we'll talk about the chassis. So this is roughly as far as we're probably going to get up here with taking it to pieces at the moment. As I said, we're having a meeting with Jonathan Wally, Dylan Ham and probably Paul Lewin over the next month or so, just to discuss where we go with this now. So because what's here essentially, everything that exists already is fine. It just needs all the wheels dropping out, taking to bits, all the bearing surfaces sorting out, as I said in the last video, and it'll be good to go when it's back all up to spec. But we need the boiler to be on top before you start messing about with any of the frame alignment and things like that. And over the past few months, the team has prepared a 10-page document in what exactly, so we've reviewed what we're going to make changes to on the chassis to benefit the locomotive. We're not going to make it a Mountaineer A or Lempore exhaust and all this sort of thing at the minute, unless that might help it later on. But just little changes, that sort of things that we've looked at and we're finding that are not going to be very helpful and aren't made very well or have had their time since it was done in 1984. One big thing that has been done that you'll be able to see obviously down here and a few shots later on is that we've actually got a full-sized mock-up of the ash pan, and see there's a hole in the bottom because it's designed for when we're going to move the pony truck pivot further forward towards the rear drivers. But we've now got a full-size mock-up in. It's incredibly similar, I've been told, to the Vale of Rydal tanks ash pans that has been designed by them for their locos. And it's quite a sizable ash pan. It's very, very deep. There's lots of room. We're going to make it nice and ergonomic so people can scrape all the ash out of each side. We'll probably have a drench bar or bit of box section at the front to spray water into the ash pan from the front. We'll wash it down and then it could flow out of the sides if there was enough volume of water. Guillaume, as I said last time, Guillaume has done a lot of work for this remotely because he's been busy with other things recently, but he always sends me the drawings and we then make things to his drawings and then make them fit to the engine, and it's a very nice job. I think it will be very easy to use. We've also made a wooden, not pan plate, but the ring that fits on the bottom of the firebox because we got fed up of lifting the big heavy metal one onto the frames, and it gives us a bit of opportunity to modify it how we might want to change that one in the future. But with the rest of everything else, which is outlined in this document and we're having a meeting about, we're going to modify both drag boxes, front and rear, to be the same as Linda's, because this document has already been sent out and they have reviewed it and they were quite happy with what we wanted to do, but we just still need to sign off on it, so it's subject to change. But it's changing the drag boxes, looking at the front end, the buffer beam, one side of the frames being bent and whether it's worth changing those at all, and also the diaphragm plates, which they're quite keen on to implement, shown by the wooden bits here, and how they'd link up to the boiler. And as I said, moving the pony truck pivot further forward, not moving the whole pony truck, so it'll stay in the same place. It's not going to be made into a four-wheel one. It's going to stay the same as it is. It's just the pivot will move, which will actually mean it might go into corners a little bit smoother than it did before, which could be a nice improvement to the engine, but we sort of don't know at this point. And then, as I said last time, we'll have the two bits that come down and link up to all this bit here, which will tidy up, and that will give some support to the rear of the loco and will allow us to mount the reverser and various other bits and pieces on that are currently hung off the boiler, which is not really the desired practice anymore. So that's the frames really. We're just waiting on that meeting, finish off the ash pan and get that signed off, and then we can sort of do some volunteer metalworking projects all related to this while the boiler's hopefully off down at Boston Lodge. Right, here we have the water tanks again. As you can see now, they've not been attacked by anything. This is the thickness testing that's been carried out on them just to see what thickness the material is. And they are upside down, so this is actually what would be the top, and this is the front face coming out. So we found some holes, as I think we said, and we've now explored those. Those who are into classic car restorations will dread this sort of thing, because you normally find sills have vanished and whatnot. But happily, we've only found the holes that we've had, and we've all marked. Our volunteer, David, has done this and marked out sort of what he thinks we need to cut out. Luckily, most of them are avoiding any of the nice curved bit up there, which is good, and should mean we shouldn't need to do any whole replacement of things, because it's only that sort of end. As you can see, this end is fine, and it's interesting to look at the thicknesses, because near the top it's at 5 and near the bottom it's at about 2.7, 2 from some little bits. But given these have been on for over 100 years now, the loss of material with water sitting in it is not horrific, and it's quite understandable really, given that they were not protected on the inside, and things like that. So we're probably going, subject to the other tank being done, we're probably going to, and the rest of the tank surface being done. We're probably going to repair these, much as what you probably may have seen has been done to Prince's water tank and earlier Welsh ponies, to keep them in service on the engine. And the two areas in the changes document that we're looking at is with these, the issues that we're finding is how to protect them while keeping all of this historical material still embedded. It will get filled over when it's painted, but we don't want to lose that, which would be a great shame. And also access. Now, only our thinner volunteers can fit up the very small filler hole at this end. People like myself find that a little bit trickier, but our idea would be to, on the rear side, because they're virtually mirrored, it just doesn't have the bolts for the nameplates, is to cut a hatch that goes all the way on that piece but bolts in and fits flush, so when it's on the engine you won't even see it's there, but it means all this section would then be open and you can go in and do things, because the way we've looked at it now is the baffles inside, they're absolutely rotten. I think they've been added at a later date, and the angles I think are going to have to be, these rivets are going to have to be drilled out and redone again in the same way. We won't weld them on because we don't want to distort the material, but it'd be better to have nicer access for more people to get in there, not have to rely on certain people. And there's also the health and safety element. You can't really have people going into confined spaces and not being able to get out, and the rescue plan would be to basically destroy the tanks if they fainted or needed medical assistance. So having a removable panel would be a definite improvement to these. And I think we're aiming for cold galvanising the tanks, which should preserve them for at least the next 40 years. So whoever might have to do this task again in the future, or when they do need new tanks, they'll have a long wait till then, and it might actually preserve them till that point as well. Right, here we are in the cab of the Mountaineer as it's set up as a mock-up. And I thought last time I just sort of spoke to you from outside and said what we were going to do, and this time I thought I'd bring you in so you can see what we're working with. So what we have here, this is as it would be, the firebox cladding is where the back head would be. This wouldn't have been particularly roomy when it was originally built. It wouldn't have been as enclosed either. But the firebox has come back a further 3 inches since it was rebuilt, so that's taken up a bit of room. And everything at the back here it probably would have angled in a little bit more, but for capacity for the oil tanks, it's been made flat. But it's not the smallest ever. I've had a day out on a Talyllyn number 3, and that is quite small. You can still have 3 people on it, so this is nothing horrible. We just need to make it as ergonomic as possible, because 2 people can work quite easily. We've taken some bits from around there, and that'd be quite comfortable. And you've got a seat for both the fireman and the driver. We're leaving those as they are, but you could also have a 3rd man as well for training purposes and crew familiarisation at certain points. But obviously on a hot day, it's a very small cramped cab. You want lots of airflow through it in that case, and you'd probably limit it to 2 people. And speaking of airflow, the 2 side windows, now you've seen from the original cab in the first iteration of the cab in the 1970s, the slant-sided headbanger cab as it was called, had some nice brass window frames with fixed windows. This, the new Fairley style cab, had fixed windows in it also, but we've decided that the rear panes, these are a bit oversized, but the rear panes will be like the Garrett ones, side windows. You can slide them in front of the other ones, so you've got a bit more airflow. They're not really designed to stick your head out to see things. They're more designed to get some, if when you're going across the cob, have side air coming through as well as the doors being open and whatnot. But that'll be a nice little volunteer project to sort out or get some laser cut bits. We might have to cut this support down a little bit, shave a bit off so it slides in, but that will mean it's a bit more cooler in here on hot days. You've still got the sunroof as well. We're keeping that. 2 whistle levers. We might turn that to 3 depending on how various meetings go, and that'd be quite nice to do. The shovel plate down here, which is mocked up, it might stay near the floor. It might go slightly higher where this lump of metal that needs to be removed might go there to be flat. Some crew have suggested just putting in a sort of plank of wood and scuttling the coal across into the firebox, which might work for some people if they want to do that, but it will be you will be able to hand fire it quite easily. And then everything else, all the valves, we're all going to keep the same. We're going to start the process of overhauling these soon because we've got some citric acid to dip them in and sort out all the seals and everything. And in here, it will change a little bit. We've got rid of all the oil firing equipment down there, but it's going to be kept as the Mountaineer because this is the feel of how people liked it back in the day. We just need to finish off making a mock-up for the gauge glasses and the regulator body, and as I said with the meeting, we can invite Jonathan Wally in here and we'll make a decision on what we're going to do. Also outside there's the coal rails, which will just increase the coal capacity a little bit, and Guyon has calculated as well, he's measured the bunker, and it's actually the same if not greater coal capacity without the coal rails as Taliesin. So even though we have changed coal to the power mix variety with lumps of briquettes and real coal, it should have enough capacity to pull a 7-car train to Blaenau. So, right, well, thank you very much for watching this update. Yes, this time it's not as big as fun as the boiler coming off like in our last update. It's not quite as visually pleasing, but we have been up to lots of little things. But as I said, we are waiting for a meeting to then unlock a lot more work. There is still bits of the cladding and other parts that need to go off to the shop blasters, and as I said in the cab, we've got all fittings to go through and get them clean. So then when it does go down to Boston Lodge, even further on in the future into the restoration of it, all the parts are ready to put back on, or there's very little that needs doing to them. So all I can say is thank you very much for your support so far. I'm sure Mr. Wooden will put in all the links to where you can come and support us. And I simply ask if you wish to come along or offer us support remotely for repairs of fittings or doing other work, or suggestions of who to use for sort of work that we want to carry out other than what can be offered at Boston Lodge. We'd be more than happy to hear from you. And if you want to come along and join, we still have plenty of jobs for you to lend your hand at. We'll offer you some training as well. So if you think you've never done it before, don't worry, we can sort you out. And as again with funding, that's as I highlighted last time, please do keep giving, because the sooner we have enough money to get all the work done, the sooner you can see the Mountaineer running back out on the railway. It's that simple really. So thank you very much, and see you again next time.
I do not see why people quite enjoy
I'm loving
doing
this.
their locomotive. you have?
He left it on the track
Ah,
for us to go over.
Yes, so we'll see if it's a speed issue or if it's a power issue.